All right, good morning, everybody, or afternoon now. I'm Courtney Mercer. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown New Jersey. As you know, we've been holding these forums for almost weekly since the shutdown started. Today, we're pleased to have Christina Fuentes, who's the Director of Small Business Services at NJEDA. And I know some of you, I told you we were going to take a week off, but Christina offered to fill us all in the new funding that available. So I did not want to turn her down. And based on registration, I'm guessing y'all are happy with that decision. So I'm just going to very briefly tell you about Downtown New Jersey for those of you who don't know us. We are a member-supported nonprofit organization. We provide education, advocacy, and recognition to promote downtown revitalization. And I'll emphasize we are member supported. So if you're not a member and you want to support us, we greatly appreciate it. That helps fund me to put on these webinars and provide all the resources that are on our website. We don't have a forum scheduled for next week. I'm not sure if we will have one, but we'll have one the week after. And all of our past forums, there's summaries and videos and PowerPoints, and particularly last week's, a lot of the municipalities gave us sample resolutions and all that related to street opening. So check out all of the past forums if you missed them for information, great information for your downtowns. And in late October, we will be having our own virtual conference, still figuring out the technical aspects of that, but stay tuned. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing so that Christina can share her screen and fill you in on the next round of grants. All right, Christina.
It says I'm disabled.
Okay, it's probably just a little delay. Give it a try again.
Keep saying that. I'm keep trying.
Yeah, sometimes it just, let's see. Zoom seems slow today.
Yeah, it just keeps saying that.
All right, if you want, I can pop it up on mine because you gave it to me.
Okay.
And then you can just tell me when to forward. So let me just share. And I will make it full screen, and then you just tell me when to.
Yeah, you can just go through the first couple ones because it's just the basic information about the package that, yeah. So, okay. You know, we had put this together from, there we go. So this was the previous grant program that we originally had. And when we had our special board meeting back in March, we were really putting a package together at that time to address the needs and kind of get ahead of this the best way we could. And I did present about this program. It was a very niched and NAICS code specific. So we were oversubscribed in the first hour and a half. The important thing to kind of highlight is we are going to get through the list of people that have been receiving, you know, as soon as they submit an application, they were told they were either waitlisted or part of an oversubscribed bucket. So due to the CARES Act funding that we did receive, that was the $50 million, we are going to be able to fund that whole list of people that were told they were waitlisted. Now, granted, because, you know, that's application up to 5,001 basically, but because it was so specific, there's a lot of people that submitted an application that are getting declinations because they weren't, you know, the specific NAICS code, or they were sole proprietors or 1099. So those people that did get declined can feel free to apply for the next application. And if you go to the next slide, that is what this new appropriation is for. So we have $45 million, which is coming from the CARES Act funding for a more expanded grant program. So this time we are going to pick up the sole proprietors that file their Form Cs. We are going to pick up the 1099 entities. If you are a business that has, you know, multiple 1099 employees, that 1099 employee can submit an application, but you as well too. So granted, because you don't have W-2 employees, you will qualify for the minimum, which is 1,000. For all those business owners that do have 25 or fewer full-time employees, they would essentially be able to get 1,000 per full-time equivalent. The calculator still will be up on the portal as well too, so you can figure out what a full-time equivalent employee equates to, because part-time employees do add up to full-time people. It's based on hours. So I suggest anyone who has filed a WR30, you would essentially go into that calculator that's on the COVID portal, which is the cv.business.nj.gov. And you can do in the search bar, there's eligibility wizards, and if you Google, like, it's a search bar, you just type in the calculator, it will pull it up for you, so you can essentially do it and just know ahead of time. I just want to highlight too, we tried to keep it as simple as possible, like we did with the first one. We will have that live on the portal on June 1st, so people can walk through it, they can explore it, see what the questions are, make sure they know they're answering properly. Feel free to reach out if you do have questions and you're not sure how you should answer something because you don't want to jeopardize your eligibility. Get ahead of the game and do that prior to it going live, because again, it's going to be first come, first serve on June 9th. It will be live at 9 a.m. as well. Again, that application would be posted on the portal, very similar process. And so, just want people to know ahead of time that, like, make sure you know what you're doing, so then that way it doesn't jeopardize any kind of results in the eligibility or not.
We have a couple of questions already, Christina.
Yeah.
And I think I can partially answer them, but one is, will childcare centers be eligible this time around?
Yeah.
So yes. And then another is, what does registered to do business in New Jersey mean?
So when you are basically register a business entity that's with the state, you essentially, when you're doing your formation documents, you get your EIN numbers through the federal government, and then you have to register with taxation. That is anybody who's registered with taxation.
And your next slides might get to it, but somebody's asking what documents will be required on June 9th for the application.
So on June 1st, you'll be able to see and walk through that application. But again, it's not going to be attachment heavy. We're not requiring that because we're going to do the back end work. So we're doing your Department of Labor check, and we're going to be doing your taxation check. As long as you are registered to do business, you would come up in that taxation check. There still is an appeal process like there is with the first one. So for some people who might have used ADP, for example, this was a good one that came up, and we kind of learned our lessons from this one. So because ADP processes their payroll, they used ADP's EIN number, so it looked like they weren't in good standing with Department of Labor. So they were technically declined. We went through the appeal process and overturned their declinations to approve them. So we learned from our, the first round that there is certain scenarios where that will come up, but we still have an appeal process that will help you get through that as well too.
Gotcha. And I wanted to clarify, so for nonprofits or anyone, you said that 1099 contract employees count up to a FTE?
Yes. Yeah. So it would still be the max of 25 though. But with the 1099s, essentially you are that contractor, so you can apply yourself, but the business entity that is established in the state can apply as well too. So we just want to make sure the business isn't counting all their full 1099s, thinking that they're going to get the credit for that when it's, they're not W-2 employees still. So
gotcha.
Just qualify for minimum. Yeah.
All right. And is that based on hours or salary in FTE?
It's based on your hours, the calculation, because part-time employees do count towards that calculation. That's why we put the calculator online so people can go through that and understand.
Okay. Let's see.
The nonprofits are still going to be the same because this is federal dollars, and C6s, it's under the Stafford Act because of lobbying efforts. That's the whole reason why we can only have these 3 nonprofits as eligible.
And Orlando, I think that's an answer to your question. C6s are not eligible.
Yeah.
And then I think there's another NAICS code question, and you're saying there's no NAICS code.
No NAICS code. Yeah. There's no restriction. Anybody, as long as, you're a qualified, registered to do business in the state and it's a legal business, we're not going to have those restrictions with the NAICS code.
And then another question is, if a business received the PPP loan or SBA, EIDL, does that disqualify them from the grant?
No, it doesn't disqualify them. You just want to make sure to be very mindful of the duplication of benefits issue. So it's called DOB, stands for duplication of benefits. But because we receive federal dollars through the CARES Act, PPP is the same thing, it's federal dollars. So you want to be very mindful, and with PPP, it's for a certain specific time period you would have gotten that loan for. So you would have qualified for 8 weeks of payroll during that time period. When you qualify for this grant and you get these funds, you want to make sure that you're going to use this grant for a different use than what you used it for under PPP. So remember, PPP was restricted for payroll, utilities, rent. Just make sure that these funds are not essentially going to cover a similar benefit in that same time period, and make sure you keep your documents. Like, I can't emphasize that enough for people. Just on the back end, if there's ever an audit or people question you, you just want to make sure you can demonstrate how you spent your funds. And
Right.
It would be the same thing with this grant.
And so, for example, the PPP only allows, I think 25% of it could go to rent.
Rent and utilities.
So then if you could demonstrate the other if you paid rent and it was 75% outside of PPP, that would be good. And given rents in New Jersey, that's probably not too hard.
Exactly. And because it was very restrictive in PPP, I mean, you know, you can look to inventory, you can look to additional, you know, if there was expenses you were paying for, you know, just make sure it's just not duplication in any way. And I just want to emphasize that to people too, because I don't work for SBA, but I sit on a lot of webinars. I see the updated information. I do think there is legislation out there that's going to be coming about to expand that time period that qualifies for PPP, because they realize that the businesses are under such distress with trying to get the funds out the door when they're not open. And states like New York and New Jersey are really struggling with this. So there's talks of extending that time period drastically to allow them to have a little bit more time to use those funds. So then this way they're not knocked out of, you know, for it to be forgiven as well. And then they're talking about extending, if it isn't forgivable, it goes from a 2-year to a 5-year loan as well, to again allow people to have some flexibility with, you know, there's some business owners that I know took a PPP and already know out the gate that they're not going to get the forgivable piece, and they're okay with it. But I worry for them, because it's, you know, that's a payment that people didn't expect or anticipate, and will they be okay? So, you know, it's nice to at least hear that the federal government is looking to those concerns. So that's a good thing.
A couple more. Do you want to move on, or do you want to keep doing questions?
I mean, whatever works. It's
Okay.
fine with me.
So the next one, what are income qualifications? I own a business that has never brought in profit. What is the size of the grant?
It's based on employees, so I'm not sure.
And
it's not.
Are there any income qualification? I know that the PPP is people under 100,000.
No, we didn't have. There's no revenue qualification for this grant because it's based off of full-time employees,
Okay.
or full-time equivalents, I should say.
Full-time
Sorry.
equivalents. And then just to confirm, if you applied for the first round and did not receive because you were waitlisted, then.
Okay. So if you were waitlisted, you are going to be looked at. So for anyone who did receive funds under this original, under the first pot, if you did get a grant, that's okay. You can apply for the second one, but I just want you to be mindful that for the second one, they're looking at your first quarter WR30. So that would be January, February, and March. So under the other one, it was the last quarter of 2019. So if you've had more employees in this first quarter of 2020, you can qualify for the difference only. So you will be eligible for something, but if there's nothing to be eligible for, then you shouldn't probably submit an application. But again, you can go through, you would have filed your WR30 at the end of April. So I would suggest you talk to your accountant, or if you do it yourself, look at that form, see if there's a difference, see what the number of employees, if it went up, great, submit an application and you'll get the difference as a grant.
And that's related to the first grant round was 10 employees. So now if they have 20, they could apply for the additional 10 difference.
Yep, exactly.
Right. But if you were waitlisted, Tom, you don't need to reapply because you were waitlisted and they're looking at it. Right, Christina?
He can, again, if there's more employees that he would be eligible for, then he should reapply, yes.
But otherwise, if they're under the 10, just wait.
Exactly. Yeah, it depends on everyone's situation. Is probably going to be a little different. So, you know, the worst that happens is you submit an application and they just work through it or decline you. So, you know, I tell everybody just submit it, and just in case.
Okay. I don't see other questions, so I'm going to bump to the next slide.
So this was a special piece that we did. It's a $15 million set aside out of that $45 million that's getting allocated just to opportunity zones. And that's a way for us to really make sure that these targeted cities and municipalities are getting the additional funding that they truly need. And we're going to, you know, it's the same similar process application. We funnel that through us internally on the back end. We will process them and just pulling it from a different pot of funds essentially. But it's just, you know, it kind of helps people give a little bit more reassurance. If you're a part of, I think there's over 700 opportunity zone census tracts. It wasn't the ones, we're not utilizing the ones that the governor approved because there was only a percentage that were approved. This is all eligible census tracts that are opportunity zones. And I believe the number is like 712. I could be wrong. But again, we also wanted to make sure we were helping some people who might had some language, you know, capacity problems under that first grant application. So on June 1st, when this goes live on the portal, it's going to be translated in multiple languages too. And there's an email that people can reach out to if they need some help with that and kind of just making sure it's going to be the right thing. I believe, okay, my understanding, and this could change, is that when the application goes live on the 9th, it will be in English. So they would have to understand that, you know, what question meant what. We will have it in English and Spanish, but if they're beyond, you know, in different dialects and, you know, need help in a different language, they should get that help prior to it going live. I kind of want to emphasize that for people, that make sure you do the outreach before it goes live so you understand how to answer those questions beforehand.
The opportunity zones, I know there's a map up there. I think those are only the approved ones. Is there going to be a map of
We are going to have an updated map. Yeah, so okay. DCA right now has the ones where you type in your address and then it pulls it up for you. And then, but that's just the governor approved ones is my understanding. Right. So we are creating a separate widget that you would put in your address and then it would essentially tell you if you're eligible or not eligible.
Okay. Let's see. Tasha, yes, the slides will be available. Actually, the slides are already up on our website because Christina sent them to me ahead of time. Does the application go live Monday, June 1st, and then do first come, first serve June 9th? Or does it go live June 9th?
June 1st is the day that the public will be able to see the application and walk through it. I was hoping I would have had it for the presentations, but I don't because we're still finalizing the language. So on June 1st, everybody will be able to see this application so you can walk through it, see what the questions are. But then on June 9th at 9 a.m., that's when you submit your official application at 9 a.m. And it is first come, first serve. So make sure, like the ones that went through the process on the first time, like I would be on that website at like 8:50 if you could possibly do that. Because I know a lot of people, just because it went so fast, you know, they were waitlisted, like, you know, those emails started kicking in for the waitlisted list at like 9:45. So if you can get it in and know how to answer and just, you know, make sure you don't make mistakes and make sure you put in the right email address too. A lot of people had, I don't know if they were just typing too fast maybe. A lot of people put in wrong emails. And then when the response came back with the confirmation number, they weren't able to get it. It created a lot of confusion. And also when we do outreach to you that you've been approved and here's your agreement, and then we need your checking account information, a lot of people are not responding to those emails even under the first pot. So it's creating this delay on our end because they think it's a scam. So if you get this email and you think it's a scam, please call EDA. Don't just ignore it. because that holds up the whole process. And it, you know, we direct deposit these funds, and we want to make sure we just keep things moving as fast as possible, because we're trying to wrap up the first grant before we get into the second one, and it's, you know, right around the corner.
Right. So it sounds like it's a good idea is to just kind of fill it all out in a Word document, make sure everything's spelled right, and then copy and paste it in when it goes live. Might be a good way to handle that. And yes, the email, that's important, because some of y'all do that for this Zoom too, and you don't get the confirmation that you can join because you typed your email in wrong.
Yes. It was a big problem that a lot of people, you know, in the back end, we were struggling, like, you know, we had to be on the phone. Okay, I'm going to send it to you right now. And then it was like, make sure you check your junk, or, you know, all the other folders as well. So it's just a lot of people, you know, make sure you have your right EIN number and you're putting that in properly too. That's another thing. And, but it shouldn't be too heavy of a lift for anyone who's looking to do an application. It's very simplistic.
Okay. I just have another confirming that it's the first quarter WR30 payroll report.
Yes, January, February, and March, and you would have filed this at the end of April.
Okay.
So for those who didn't file, make sure you get it in, just, you know, because I do think you can do it late, but just make sure you get that in now, so then that way it's done and you're good. For those who didn't, sorry to cut you off.
No, no problem. Someone suggested maybe adding a verify email option to ensure proper email submission. Could be, yeah, like they can put it in twice.
I think they do.
Yeah.
They do.
But people copy and paste the first time.
They put their EIN number 3 times, and we still somehow, you know, get 3 versions of an EIN. The email, you put it in twice, I believe. It could be 3 times as well too, but yeah.
There was a little concern that the application is going to go live the same time as Senate President Sweeney's virtual town hall. So just something to note.
I see.
Yeah. And if you don't have payroll, if you're self-employed, so you don't have, so you do
for the minimum.
Right. So, but you don't have a WR30 then.
Nope.
That's fine.
You would have filed a Form C because you're a sole proprietor, and you would still be eligible. So anyone who doesn't have those W-2 employees, you get the minimum.
And then what if your FTE is now lower than Q1? Doesn't matter. It's based on Q1.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's a question, what is the minimum?
1,000.
All right. I think we can jump to, no more questions. I'll jump to the next slide, Christina.
Yeah. This just highlighted our loan program that went live and, you know, is exhausted. I just do want to highlight for people who did submit applications, or if you can communicate to anybody you may know that did, we did our first 160, and now we're up to another 95 applicants that we are working through. There is a status tracker that is on the COVID portal. So I know a lot of people, you know, they send out, you know, what's the status of my loan? So make sure you can reference people, like, you know, to check that COVID portal and utilize the status tracker if you want. And, you know, if you want me to send that to anybody, it's easily accessible. But we are slowly working through those because there is an underwriting process that we have to get through. So I just wanted to let people know we are getting through those.
Okay. I can find it because I'll put it the link in the summary of this.
Yeah, it's right on the COVID portal. If you do the search bar for loan status tracker, it should come up for you.
Okay. Here's your next slide.
So this just highlighted the CDFI Loan Loss Reserve Fund that we created for the CDFIs, which are community development financial institutions. And we partnered up with 6 of them that are New Jersey based, and all 6 of them, which the next slide will highlight, these are our partners that have created COVID specific working capital products. And what we did under the loan loss reserve was we essentially, as an authority, put $10 million on a reserve for our balance sheet to cover all these loans that they will be doing up to 50%. And that allows the CDFIs to be comfortable with doing working capital loans with like a little bit more of a riskier term, you know, associated to that. So like for New Jersey Community Capital, for example, They have a very good relationship with some foundations and have been able to raise a substantial amount of money to offer working capital loans that go up to $75,000 with no collateral requirements. So that's typically not something that lenders want to do, but they're willing to do because we've put in this, we're in the first position if they default in the future. So the CDFI knows that EDA will cover those loans up to 50%. So it allows them to do that. So if anybody's interested, their program is called the Garden State Relief Fund. And like I said, it's up to $75,000. And it's also a 3% interest rate for a 36-month term as well too. So it is flexible terms for people who are looking at additional resources. We have CBAC that is going live. They represent South Jersey, the 7 southern counties in South Jersey. Their working capital product is only up to $20,000. So they're slowly getting through. That literally just went live this week. GNEC is they're slowly going to have that live in the next couple of weeks or so, but that's a Newark specific product. RBAC is also a approved PPP lender, but they also have this COVID specific product. And UC EDC, they have a specific working capital product that's for up to $25,000, and it depends on your credit score if you would fall for $15,000 or up to $25,000. But they also utilized a grant for the CDFIs that EDA put up. We gave them $250,000 to buy down interest rates on their loans. So they are offering their loans at 0% interest rate, actually. And one of our newest partners is the First Bergen Federal Credit Union, which is a little bit smaller in capacity, but they're still offering a working capital loan product that should be going live in the next couple of weeks too. So we're happy that we have resource partners that can offer additional resources. And if you go to the COVID portal and you type in the search bar, you can just do loan loss reserve or type in one of their names. It will take you to the article that talks about this as well too, so you can get their contact information. And I just want to emphasize too with New Jersey Community Capital, it's all online. It takes, it's an approval process of a couple of weeks. It's very simplistic. It's a two-step, it's an application that you submit and then you send them the documentation. They have really streamlined the process. It's a very attractive process, and it's, I can't emphasize enough how much they have been so helpful in helping, the state really address some of these needs with the working capital. They have over 300 applications that they're actually working through right now. So the demand is definitely there, but they work with you, and I can't emphasize that enough. So sorry. Next slide.
Actually, Christina, on that note, because we've been pushing to have the DBIZ program reinstated, but it sounds like if it's the 0% loan, which was what, UCEDC, right?
Yeah.
So a bid in theory could go for that 0% loan to, buy tables or install parklets or things like that. Would that be something that's eligible, do you think?
It depends on what they're looking for in the capacity, so these are all micro lenders to begin with. So like New Jersey Community Capital, typically they're not a micro lender. They like to do bigger residential projects, but because of COVID, they've stepped into this realm. So for UC EDC though, they do micro lending. So they're typically always going to be a partner if you're looking to do anything. The same thing with CBAC, who represents South Jersey. They all have their own little niches, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, but they are funded through SBA as well. And so they typically do a 504 loan or a 7A loan, but just under COVID, it's a different realm right now that we're dealing with. But as a CDFI, the biggest, I think a lot of people miss that is through federal regulations, they have to go through an application process and demonstrate that they have a proven track history of lending, but also that 60% of their applicants are through federally, approved LMI areas. So they are getting that low to moderate income. All their applicants have to be at least 60, it's 60% of that pool. And so those businesses that are located in those approved areas are typically the ones that are hiring from those distressed communities. And that's a really important part to understand from a CDFI. Because I feel like they're not marketed the way they should be. And there's a lot of people in the business community that have businesses that don't even know about these resources that they offer. So I just want to try to like push them out. So I definitely think it's something that, you know, people can explore as an option.
Okay, great. Robin asked about the NAICS code. I'll answer that again. No NAICS code requirements this time. You just can't be a 501c6 because that's a lobbying organization. I think this relates back to your grant program. Are there any requirements to what expenses the grant can be applied to, aside from not duplicating the PPP expense?
Yeah, just make sure you're not using it for the same time period or same expense. And then just make sure you keep track of how you've used it too. And that's just me telling you personally. It's not like we're going, you know, I don't know what the future holds, but I just want to make sure people do not get caught up in the duplication of benefits. And I'm just trying to warn people of that, you know, just be very mindful, just because this did come from federal dollars, so.
Right. I think Isaac has a question kind of related to what I asked. For a bid that is a nonprofit eligible to receive an EIDL, are there any loan guarantees available? So it sounds like they maybe could go for some of these CDFI.
So, I mean, so the loan guarantees are to the CDFI that we offer them to, and then they register each loan. So yeah, you could potentially look for a working capital loan, but, you know, it's up to the CDFI and their application process. We just gave the CDFIs the resources to start up these programs. So yes, you could explore that option.
SIDS bids that are dealing with low working capital due to the property owners struggling to pay their assessments, what grant loans are available for a management company? Yeah. You know our audience here, Christina.
Yeah, I know. You know, and it's something that I think in our Main Street Council needs to kind of address too, that it gets overlooked about SIDS and bids.
Yes.
And
which is why I keep bringing up the DBIZ program.
Yeah, I know. I've already been down that path and got told no. So just, okay. I did that a year and a half ago. The issue with DBIZ is there's no prevailing wage. Yes. And that's why it's a hurdle for EDA to put funds into that. Yeah. But I don't know what DCA plans are doing. I know there's a lot of different programs that are being talked about and a lot of different initiatives. So I think this is, you know, although we are on phase 2 of grant, like, you know, we're still constantly looking at ways that we can kind of help. And the focus is definitely there for like the main streets, but I think SIDS and bids, like I keep bringing up that point when I'm asked my opinion, like this is something that like we need to support too, because you're tied so tightly into that community. And if people are going to pay their assessments or their property taxes, this is going to be a huge ripple effect.
And I think a lot of the bids and SIDS are reluctant to apply for these grants because they don't want to take away from their businesses. But if there was something that was for towns and or bids and SIDS to do things to assist their businesses, like the purchasing, the bulk purchasing of PPE, or doing this thing so they can expand outdoors, then I think they'd feel more comfortable going for those funds, because then they're not competing with their businesses. It's the competing with the businesses that the bids are concerned with. So if there's something standalone, they feel better about it.
And I think that's probably something we should talk offline is like, what is the capacity to offer technical assistance to small businesses too? Is that something we should look to the SIDS and bids to do? Like, is that capacity even there? Because a lot of this is, you know, how do they reopen? How do they restructure if they have to? And, you know, that's something that we're currently looking at too. So maybe we could do a separate like listening session on that.
Okay. Yep. And I think it depends on the SID and the bid.
Exactly.
And it depends on what resources you can give them, right? Because I think we're all strapped right now. So to ask them to do something extra when they're not afraid they're not going to get their full assessments, then it's going to be hard. They're doing what they can though. So, all right, we'll have a separate offline. We can maybe do a little subcommittee with you on that.
Yeah, that'd be helpful to me actually.
Okay. Your next slide.
Oh yeah, so we partnered up with these 4 entities that are actually, you know, it's been really great because they've been helping process the EIDL applications, but then we also allowed them to process PPP applications. So they all have created their own separate relationships with banks. And they can, with Rising Tide, they're actually, they can offer multiple languages for people who might, not be comfortable processing PPP, because there is still funding out there for PPP. A lot of people who in the beginning were basically turned away from their bank. And I think they just kind of gave up and didn't really follow through with it. You should reach out to one of these 4 entities. You don't have to be a member. They won't require you to join a membership or anything. And they're really helpful, and they have been doing the hand holding, walking them through the process. Again, if you go on the portal and you can type in SBA technical assistance, these entities will come up and you can reach out to them. Or if you want me to do an introduction, happy to do it. I just did one the other day to the African American Chamber, and they reached right out to them and are helping them because they have a relationship with several banks as well. And, it's a resource that's out there for the PPP, and people should look to utilize it. Even if you're going to get qualified for a smaller amount. And then SBA was also saying too, if you were qualified and need your amount updated, because for some reason for seasonal businesses, the rules changed, and your bank is telling you, no, we can't do that. I found out yesterday that that's not true, and they shouldn't be telling you that. So SBA has offered that you can reach out to their regional office and they will talk to the bank and help the applicants with that. So I found that a little interesting, but it's just, there's a lot of different information out there. So I can share with you those contacts too for the regional office, but just be mindful for SBA, they only have 10 employees work in that office.
Right.
So,
And I think I have all that up on our resource page from the first time around. So I think there's links to these 4, and there's links to the regional offices. But for the CDFIs, I think there's some new ones on there. I'll have to add those.
Okay, perfect.
As well. Let's see. Just everybody look in the chat. Isaac and Jeff are providing some info for you with links. Jeff Bueller says LISC has a 30 million fund for PP available as well. It's open for businesses for another 2 weeks.
And they're targeting on women and minority-owned businesses too. So LISC is out of Newark. Their office has been running a specific. They were approved, I think originally it was 50 million, and they've already have kind of dwindled down on that. But they're very focused on targeted minorities and women as well. So anybody, you can just do the outreach. And you essentially fill out a survey that identifies who you are and your business, and then they reach back out to you. That's how they're doing that.
Okay. Christina, I got a private question. These 4 groups, are they willing to work with BIDS to facilitate webinars for their small businesses, do you think? Does that have any sense?
I haven't seen any of them do webinars. So Rising Tide though has been very helpful. I mean, I could see them probably be willing to do that. Basically the way it's been working is they've just been blasting out emails, and anybody interested, they have designated people that work on that. With the Hispanic Chamber, it's the same way. I see the emails constantly coming out in the Veterans Chamber too. But I mean, they've all been very helpful. I don't want to say that they will absolutely do it, but I don't see them telling you no either, because these are all 4, all 4 entities are very great and very helpful. So if you need me to coordinate something, I can happily make that connection for them. Just remember their capacity, because these aren't huge organizations that are doing this, but they're doing a great job at doing this. And I can't emphasize enough how happy I am with the results that we've been getting from this too. And people have actually gotten their money too. So that's actually, it gives me a little bit more reassurance when I hear people have gotten their EIDL grants and loans too.
All right. Here's your next slide.
Yeah, so this is just highlighting our traditional products that we have. We have our newer product, the micro business loan, which is really targeted towards startups and smaller scale, more mom and pop organizations that would be in your main streets. And for anybody who's really looking for maybe some working capital or equipment, it's not to kind of you know, it's not, I'm closed and I'm worried and, you know, I need this because of COVID. This is more for working capital because maybe you have to look at your marketing plan and maybe you need to like kind of restructure some things and bring on some people for payroll, or to kind of cover rent. If you need equipment, you know, like maybe a deep freezer, or, you know, some of the companies that do signs have been, because everyone's doing these lawn signs for graduations. So some people have been looking to do some additional equipment for their business. It's a really good tool because we have a lot of flexibility with the micro business loan. It's a 10-year term at a guaranteed 2% rate, and we give you up to 3 years with no payments. So it's a very flexible, we amortize that up to 15 years if you need us to, which takes that $50,000 up to a payment of less than $400 a month. So, you know, it's very attractive, and I haven't seen rates or terms that flexible because even the federal government at this time is like a 2.76. So it's eligible to startups too, and it's the first time that EDA has allowed that, but you do have to go through an entrepreneurial training program or your small business development center counseling sessions, because either way you do that, you would come out with a business plan and financial projections, and we would need to see at least 5-year projections, because if you are a startup, you wouldn't have any kind of revenue or any demonstration of tax returns to prove the business has been succeeding. So we would base the lending purely on those projections. And that's why it's very important for you to go and do that. And we would help make a connection to the Small Business Development Center that is closest to you if you need us to do that too. And then I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, it sounds like not ideal because there is some interest. It's not a grant and it's not 0% loan, but bids would also be eligible for the Small Business Fund as a nonprofit.
Yeah, we allowed nonprofits, but you would have to be in existence for at least 3 full years. You are eligible too under that micro business if that's something. Oh no, I'm sorry. Nonprofits and home base were not eligible. We are looking at home base to see if there's a way that we can, because of COVID, you know, maybe there's a way we can look at changing this so home base would be eligible under micro business. But for small business fund, you could definitely qualify for that. And I think the revenue restrictions wouldn't really, you know, hold too many people back. But then you could also graduate up to direct loan too, which would allow you to just kind of grow your capacity for any small business owner.
Great.
Okay.
Next one.
Yeah. So this just highlights, it's the registry intake form. That's a link right there, a live link, if anybody wants to register for this. And, you know, PPE is definitely a topic that's talked about a lot, because if we are talking about reopening, you know, does that mean everybody wears masks and gloves, and like, how does that work? And we're still kind of working through those details. But this is just kind of, you know, essentially a good way to kind of register, get involved. If you do have services you can offer, you know, a way that we can coordinate everything.
And I think I posted on our own social media yesterday, day before, the link that actually has, so if bids are looking for the suppliers, the actual,
Perfect.
because I think this one was to sign up to be a vendor, but
yeah,
so I don't have it offhand,
yeah.
But I will, it's in our social media, folks, if you're looking for supplies.
Perfect.
I can't multitask too much here and find it for you now.
And then this highlights the recovery advisory, which, you know, we're glad that you sit on, so that way you can address the Main Street concerns. And we had ours today, which I felt was like a really good conversation about, like, you know, how do we start looking at reopening? So hopefully we'll start hearing some positive news about that coming in the next couple of weeks to see, like, okay, what's the clear path? So that's a good thing. Next slide.
Actually, if I could just jump in, I think
yeah.
We've been hearing a lot, and I think we heard is that that the guidance for how to reopen will come out with probably 2 weeks lead time before you can open, because that's something that we've been saying, that, you know, people are concerned that they'll say, okay, here's the guidance, you can open tomorrow, and then they won't be able to buy whatever it is they need, supplies they need, or do whatever they need to prepare to open. So we heard loud and clear, I think today, that there will be probably 2 weeks lead time between the guidance and the actual reopening happening.
And for anyone who knows, anyone who owns a restaurant, I learned a little tidbit from the South Jersey Restaurant Association that ServSafe, which I saw in the slides, is actually offering free certification until the end of this month, which I think is probably in a couple of days. I lost track of time, but so that is a class and a certification that's offered for free right now. So I've been trying to let everyone know about that as well too. And when I saw it in the slides, it was definitely something that, you know, I looked at the website myself and it's pretty easy to navigate too. So hopefully they can extend that out. I think it was originally, it was going to expire in the beginning of May, and then they extended it out to the end of May. So, you know, some restaurant owners are doing their own approach and following the CDC guidelines and putting it the booths and guards in between each table and coming up with their own approaches on things. But it's hard for some who don't really know the guidance. And so it is reassuring to at least hear there is going to be some type of path laid out. Yeah. And this is the, you know, portal that I've said probably, you know, a million times because I can't emphasize enough. Like, this is where you're going to go for all your resources. The calculator would be there. That is the little search bar to the left. Like, I utilize that myself all the time. But then there's also a jobs portal too for anyone who may be looking for a job in the meantime. But I think this is my last slide. And if there's any other questions, I'm happy to just continue taking them.
That calculator, is that updated for phase 2, or is that still?
If it hasn't been, I believe everything will go live on 6/1, the new calculator, the OZs, and the application.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop share, and then, yeah, as long as we can do it orderly, we can feel free to chime in, ask a question, or any other thoughts, particularly for bids, on how, what kind of help we're looking for. Or are we good? Nobody's chiming in. You did such a wonderful job, Christina.
Hi, hi, I'm Noelia Colon. I'm actually speaking on behalf of the UEC and the BID for the city of Perth Amboy. Thank you so much for that presentation, Christina.
Mm-hmm.
I actually am super interested in finding out if there's a way we can have a conversation about assistance for the bids. I know some people had asked for grant applications, or if they could apply for this grant or other grants or other loans. And as was mentioned, competing with businesses is not something that we're looking to do. We're looking to assist. And so our bid is actually looking to assist in chiming in with some funding for CDBG funds that were granted to the city of Perth Amboy. Tashi Vasquez, who's our director for OECD in the city of Perth Amboy, is coordinating a small grant similar to the one that was done for NJEDA, trying to give our local businesses some sort of support. But if there's something that can be done to support our efforts locally, of course, that would be super helpful if you do and when you decide to make that announcement for when you'll be discussing assistance for bids or SIDS. I'm sure other bids and SIDS organizers are on this call. Please let us know, but I'll be definitely willing to participate for that discussion.
So I just want to highlight too, when it comes to the CDBG funding, it's through HUD. That's going to be very low to moderate income restricted. I know I've talked to several cities who are kind of in the same situation. So I'm just going to put this out there just so you can understand. It would be hard to marry up the grant program that we have to CDBG funding. And that's the challenge that a lot of cities right now, I've spoken to probably about 6 that have the funding and are a little kind of, we don't really know what to do with it. So we've explored that option of looking at our grant program. But again, it creates a challenge because of that restriction to prove that they are low to moderate income, from my understanding.
So if I may, I will say that I have spoken to, this is Tashi Vasquez, Noelia's counterpart of Perth Amboy. I will say that I have spoken to HUD representatives, and the way that we are going to
I'm fine.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, it was somebody who wasn't muted. Go ahead.
Okay. The way that we are going to do our small business grant is that we requested a waiver for self-certification.
Okay.
So the employer will have to have we're looking to give the small grant so that the employer can keep low to moderate income people employed with in jobs that require just a high school diploma. So then the employer who applies for, business owner who applies for our grant will have to have the employee complete a self-certification form saying this is where I fall, low to moderate income household.
Gotcha.
And then they would be able to get our funds to keep that person employed. And then all we're gonna request following up with that will be their payroll records for the next month or so, or however, you know, depending on what their grant amount is, they'd have to support that with payroll records.
That's great that you've already thought that through, because that was a challenge for a lot of the cities, and it's great that you guys at least have the capacity to do that. So that's good.
Yeah, and I think Jersey City was linking theirs to your grants too, but I don't know if they've actually thought all that through yet.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and then also we have, I believe there was 8 or 9 counties that received some CARES Act funding directly based upon population. So if they had in those counties 500,000 people or more, they were able to get some separate funding. So I think there's some counties that are working out that as well. I think it was like Essex, Hudson. I'm gonna miss all of them because they're all north of me. Yeah. So hard for me to keep track of everything.
Middlesex County is also doing the same.
Yeah. I wouldn't doubt if Passaic was.
Yeah, Passaic got it. I know I've been talking to Deb Hoffman. So, you know, everyone's kind of, yeah, it's a challenge because we're all stuck in this boat of like, you know, with the federal dollars and the restrictions, trying to figure out what's the best way to like, you know, get the funds available to people. And I know the business owners sometimes think, well, how come we're not doing more grants? But it's a challenge sometimes. And, you know, so we're all trying to help kind of navigate through this and make sure, you know, that we can really help the business owners on the front end and don't have any issues on the back end is the problem.
Noelle, real quick, Carol, before you go, Noelia and Tashi and everybody, so you know, in our quarterly newsletter, we always do a member spotlight. We're spotlighting all of the members, at least that we know of, that are doing some type of relief fund. So please send me, you know, a paragraph about what you're doing so that we can include it in our newsletter and say, yay, Perth Amboy, you're doing something good, and everybody else. So anyone who's up here who is a DNJ member and you're doing something, please let me know and we'll include it in that newsletter article.
And that was the city of Perth Amboy, just the city, correct?
The city of Perth Amboy, yes, and
okay,
with the BID.
Great.
Okay, Carol.
And so that we're clear, this was just, the amendment was submitted. It has not yet to be approved.
Okay.
You know, they know that it's happening. And I kind of got the green light, but until it's approved, I won't.
I totally get it. Yeah.
I won't say it's a best practice until it's approved.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so I'll just wait a little bit. If you want EDA to share any information once it is officially approved and do anything with like as far as marketing or press release, just reach out to me. We're happy to help anybody with that. And we can share stuff on social media and we can also help with press releases too.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Carol.
I just would like you to add, when you're talking about 501c6, I'm with the Englewood Chamber of Commerce, and you know, I'd like to see that as a chamber that they're included too, because we have a SID, but it's a very different organization. The chamber in Englewood does the work that a lot of the SIDs do.
So is that in regards to the grant eligibility or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no getting around that because of federal restrictions and the money that it's tied to. It's the classification that the 501c6 is. I didn't understand it until recently. It was just explained to me, but it's it's essentially the money that's tied from federal government would be funding an entity that it's all covered under a Stafford Act and because of the lobbying efforts. So.
Yeah, I think anyone who's a C6 needs to work to change to become a C4.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have learned their lesson that C6 is the way to go.
Yeah. Hey, Christina, it's Orlando from Patterson.
Hey, Orlando.
Just wanted to, just on that comment about the C6s and the chambers of commerce. I think one of the conversations we had here in Patterson with the Patterson Chamber is because of those restrictions and those guidelines, is just focusing the attention on getting the money into the hands of the business owners, who can then continue to pay, their chamber fee and membership.
Yeah.
So that because the chamber, I mean, outside of doing events, as far as fundraising, it's crucial for that the membership fee. And in times that we're facing, that might be one of the things that a business cuts off first. It's those extra fees, and we're encouraging people to continue to pay those fees so that we're a resource for them to have information at their disposal, and educating them on the resources that are available to them and things like that, so that the money gets in their hands, then they can continue to support the chamber. And
Yep. I 100% agree. When you continue being that resource for people and showing them what's available, then they're happier, right? And so it's more likely like that, and now everybody's on home on their computers, so everything's webinar based. And I know in the beginning, when a lot of chambers were getting hit with this, they had to take a ding on some events that they had booked up and already paid deposits on. I know down here in Atlantic City, we have the air show, and the Greater AC Chamber is kind of like in this limbo of like, okay, is the biggest event that they have to fund going to happen or not? So, it's a magnitude of kind of like this limbo that a lot of people are in. And, I'm sorry, I don't make the rules in that regards, but I do find that like when you are a resource, it keeps the people happy. So I definitely agree with you, Orlando.
Any other questions or comments or ideas? Seeing none, I'm going to thank you again. And by the way, mention that Christina is also a board member of Downtown New Jersey, and does a great job with us and at her work. And thank you for being with us today, Christina. And yes, for those who are asking, the recording will be available as soon as it actually processes and I can get it up on YouTube. So give me, a couple of hours. And that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.
All right.